this UI is changing now, so they came in TeamViewer and did it.
Oh, so starts changing.
I'm sure I want to start.
Okay.
I think we are live. Yeah, you can go ahead.
So I'm.
Can we check the audio? You can ask the students.
Or I can. Shall I
okay.
play here once?
Yeah, you can.
But then I need the link.
Yeah, play it. You go to NPTEL website. சதீஷ் சரிங்க ஆடியோ ஒர்க் ஆகுதுங்களா? சரிங்க அப்போ நாங்கள் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிவிடுறோங்க செஷனை. தேங்க்யூ. சரிங்க தேங்க்யூங்க. பாய்ங்க. He's telling audio is
fine
working, so you can introduce and start. Do you have those questions with you?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm assuming there is a latency, but I hope that is okay.
Yes, right? Yeah. There will be a delay of 20 seconds, so no need to worry on this thing.
Oh, okay. So I can just speak.
You can introduce yourself and then start.
Hello, good afternoon, students. I am Somnath Bhattacharya. I am the TA for the Marketing Management 1 course. So welcome to the live session. In this session, we plan to discuss about the questions that you have asked and answer some of your queries. So we floated a Google Sheet some days back, and we received a few questions from the students. So on a consultation with my faculty who gave me the answers to those particular questions, I would like to take them one by one. So the first question that many of you have asked is regarding the exam pattern, that what is the structure of the paper and how many questions will be asked and so on and so forth. So the exam is entirely multiple choice type. All questions will be multiple choice type questions. The paper will be divided into 3 sections. The first section will be directly asked from the lectures. That is, say that topic has been covered in a lecture, we will directly ask from that particular topic or that particular sentence or that particular line in the slides. The second part will be from the assignments. That is, the assignment questions will be modified or will be changed a little bit, and students will be asked to answer those questions. The third part will comprise of open questions. These questions will be new questions which has not been previously asked. These questions, at least some of these questions, will contain a paragraph that you will have to read and then answer. So the main issue here is that read the paragraph very carefully before attempting or answering these questions. As far as the paper is concerned, these are the 3 sections and these are the questions. So there will be 50 questions in total and the total marks will be 100. So let me now quickly move over to the questions that has been asked in the forum. One of the questions is, what is a marketing plan? So typically, a marketing plan is a document that contains an organization strategy for a particular purpose. Say, for example, I am a biscuit seller and I want to increase my sales from 5% to 10%. So I'll create a marketing plan which will contain the details of how I plan to increase my sales from that 5% to 10%. Some of the important constituents of that marketing plan will include primarily the goal that I'm trying to accomplish using that particular marketing plan. Then it will include the analysis of the current market scenario. That is, what kind of competitors do I have, what kind of competition do I have, what kind of political and economic situation do I have, and so on and so forth. So we have discussed in our course regarding SWOT and PESTEL. So these kind of tools are usually used to discuss about the competition. Once that is done, then the organization tries to frame the strategies. For example, say I am trying to increase my sales by 5%. Say currently I am selling 100 biscuits, then I want to sell 105 biscuits. So what are the generic strategies? Something can be, I decrease the price of my product. Typically that should result in an increase in sales. Or I should enter a new market, say a particular state or a particular district where my product is currently not sold. So this strategy part will contain exactly what I am trying to do. Then comes the cost of the program. If I am going for a reduction in price, my company has to bear the cost of that reduction in price. Now it has to be carefully analyzed whether that decrease in cost will be offset by the increase in sales. Or say if I am going for a new online marketing campaign or a YouTube campaign, will it be economically beneficial? That is, whether the return that I would generate from the marketing campaign would actually lead to that particular thing. So a brief cost analysis will be done and metrics to monitor. That is, for example, how much sales has actually happened, how much sale will happen. These kind of metrics will be decided and communicated. Last but not the least part will include the stakeholders who will be responsible for executing and analyzing and restructuring the plan if needed. For example, I have said that we will come up with a new advertising plan, and I see that after 1 month, that plan did not succeed and my sales actually went down. So then the plan has to be revisited. There must be some shortfalls that has to be addressed. So these kind of things are mentioned at the last part, that who will be in charge of implementation, with whom he needs to coordinate, and so on and so forth. So given this broad idea about marketing plan, it must be clear to you that this marketing plan usually involves input from various departments of the organization and not only the marketing team. For example, if you are trying to scale up the sales, obviously production has to be scaled up. You need to have enough biscuits to sell in the first place. So there has to be some input from the production team. Secondly, if you are trying to reduce the price, you need to get some idea from the finance team that what kind of impact will it have in the short run to the company, and what kind of impact will it have in the long run to the company. So preparing a marketing plan or strategizing and these kind of things requires input of all the stakeholders of a particular organization. It requires their expertise and it requires their experience. The second question that came in is regarding how to increase or retain market share, specifically when there is a particular slowdown. So when there is a particular slowdown, the idea is that people will not have so much extra income or extra money to buy your product. One of the ways this can be accounted or this can be adjusted for is, as I mentioned in my previous answer, by reducing the price of the product. Of course, this is a very simple thing to do, but one has to look for the cost that the company is incurring because of this. So, very briefly speaking, three basic ways of doing that, two or three basic ways of doing that can be, for example, you sell biscuits in the price range of 20 rupees per packet. Say it contains it's a butter cookie or something like that. You can come up with a cheaper variant, say a jeera cookie or something like that, which can be priced a little bit lower. Another way is to reduce the packet size. For example, you are selling biscuits of 20 rupees packet size, which sells 100 gram. So what you can do is you can sell biscuits of 80 gram or 50 gram in 10 rupees price range. This is again expected to cater to the people who are having the lower income due to this particular slowdown. Other option is to offer better credit limits. This is more applicable to items of a higher ticket size. For example, if we look at the e-commerce websites recently, we can see that many of them are coming up with free EMI, that is EMI without any interest. So this kind of better credit facility will help people to make purchases when there is slowdown and people do not have access to that liquidity or that money. However, it has to be kept in mind that there is no single simple way to counter a slowdown, specifically when the number of offerings or the type of offerings are very different from each other. For example, if you are talking about specialty products, something say like car or something like that, you simply cannot reduce the price. That might result in a very short jump in sales, but you have to take care of the impact of the cost that a particular reduction will allow. So in these cases, for example, in specialty products or in shopping products where the ticket size is relatively high and consumers are looking for something extra, slowdown can be countered by giving consumers some kind of innovative product or innovative features that they previously did not have. As an example, we all know that clothes are a type of a shopping product, right? So during a previous slowdown, what happened was companies introduced the crease-free or wrinkle-free clothes shirts, which were a huge hit. This allowed these companies to counter their slowdown in sales through their new product. So, given this discussion, we can say that there is no single simple way to counter slowdown to maintain or increase your sales. Depending on the type of product, you have to come up with an optimal strategy. Again, to come up with that, you need to take input from various stakeholders and departments of your organization to understand what will be the possible impact. One way is to manage price, other way is to through innovation and new product creation, but all of this requires some kind of agreement between the various stakeholders of the company. The third question that was asked is regarding is there any way to make low investment and gain high profit? Okay, just I'll come back to that later. Someone, Mr. Hussein Kanchwala just asked that when there is a slowdown in one economy, is that an expense of more growth in other economies? So it might be. Again, there is no single or simple answer to this. For example, if there is a slowdown in one particular country, there may be other countries which may not be experiencing that particular slowdown. So one very attractive option is to go and enter that particular country. But it might so happen that the product that you are offering will not have a very large market in that particular country. For example, say you are selling cheap biscuits in India. You see that there is a slowdown in here. So, would you try to enter the US or Europe market? You are not the cost of doing that. The first thing is, if you are a small seller, the cost of doing that will be great. So, can you handle that particular cost? So, these kind of things come in. So, while it is possible that other economies might not have a slowdown, it may also be possible that the kind of product that you are offering might not be useful or will not have a large market in that particular economy. So, but again, it may so happen that there is. So, there might be an opportunity wherein you are selling expensive shirts and you realize that a particular country is slowing down and you decide to enter into another market. So, again, you have to look carefully at the offering that you are trying to make, understand whether that particular offering has significant market in another economy, and whether you will be able to handle the costs, the expenses, handle the cultural issues that might appear if you try to enter a new market, and then decide judiciously whether it's advisable to enter that particular new economy or not. Moving on to the next question. So, we were asked that whether it's possible to have low investment and then to gain high profits. So, in some type of products, maybe yes. For example, I think all of you have had this pulse candies. So, it's a very famous case study. If you look at through in Google, you will find numerous results of that particular candy. So this candy was introduced some time back, and there were very little marketing, or I think there was no marketing campaign at all, explicit marketing campaign. But due to very precise distribution, that is, they supplied these candies to the kirana stores, wherein these candies were pushed by the retailers for exchange of 1 rupee or 2 rupees. That is, for example, you bought something of 20 rupees or 19 rupees and you gave a 20 rupee note, many a times you were given a pulse. So that kind of pushing helped people recognize the product, and because inherently the product was very good, people liked the taste of the product, it became an overnight success. So it might be possible, but again, it will very low investment will expectedly usually not fetch you very high gains in specialty goods, say something like car or something like that. It will not fetch you. But for convenience goods, it might. So again, based on the type of goods, there are ways in which low oh thank you sir low investment might bring in higher gain. So the next question is regarding positioning. So somebody has asked what is positioning and how it is useful. So instead of discussing positioning in a vacuum, let us try to understand what happens through the STP process. By STP, I mean segmentation, targeting, and positioning. The first part of this whole exercise is to divide the market. So we have, I think in the lecture, sir has discussed about the various ways or various types of variables by which you can segment or divide the market. Once you have divided the market, you realize that there are one or two target segments that I should opt for, based on whether it's in synergy with your offering, based on whether it's synergy with your organization goals, and so on and so forth. After you have decided your target segment, you need to position your product in the minds of the consumer. I believe during the 8th week of the lecture, Professor Chatterjee has discussed about perceptual maps, 8th or 7th week maybe. Sometime there he has discussed about perceptual maps. So the idea is, sir, can you give, Acha, we'll come back to that later. So the idea is, say for example, I have come up with a car. I want to position my offering or my car that I have come up with in the minds of the consumer. For that, I need to identify certain factors that a consumer values for a car. For example, if we take the case of Volvo, Volvo has over the years been very successful in positioning itself in arguably one of the world's safest car manufacturing companies. That is, their cars are extremely resilient to crashes and so on and so forth. So how did they do that? So the first thing you have to understand here is that you have to come up with dimensions that consumers value. That forms the axis of those particular perceptual maps. Once you have got the perceptual map, you have to put the current competitors. That is, for example, if Volvo is trying to do it, it will put BMW, Mercedes, Audi, and its current competitors within that perceptual map. Say, for example, it came up with two axes, cost and safety. So it will try to put BMW, Mercedes, Audi in that particular perceptual map. Then it will see that where there is a gap, then it will try to figure out if my offering can fill that particular gap. Say for example, if it sees, say when it did that, it saw that there these other cars, I'm not saying they do not focus on security, but not so much on security as in the minds of the consumer for positioning. So then they say, okay, fine, we as a car manufacturer, we will be able to deliver on this. That is, we will be able to provide consumers with cars which are extremely safe. Then they said, okay, for this, we have to ensure that the consumer perceives our car as safe. So the basic idea of positioning is to create a kind of a separate space for your particular brand in the minds of the consumer. One key important thing here to note is that positioning happens in the minds of the consumer. That is, what is the position of the particular product. Although you may say, I am trying to position this as this, but the ultimate positioning will come from the consumer's mind. If you look at the case of Tata Nano, where we discussed about its sort of questionable positioning regarding that happened in the minds of consumer of a cheap car, so we can see that a company will try to create a positioning in the minds of the consumer where it feels that one, that particular dimension is of value to the consumer. That is, Volvo feels that safety is an important feature consumers are looking for. Two, it feels that there are not enough competitors and I can create a separate identity. Three, I can actually deliver a quality car which will be safe as compared to everything else. All this will ultimately result in the positioning. So once you decide your positioning, then you try to make that positioning happen through advertising, through actually delivering the product, and so on and so forth. So this will particularly be more clear if you if students actually go through the marketing management 2 lectures where we have talked about how a brand is built and so on and so forth. So this part has been described in much more detail in that particular lecture. Interested students can of course go through the lecture stored in the NPTEL website. Apart from that, we had a question that some other examples of low investment which were successful. There were this case of I think Diamond Snacks, so which were competitors of Kurkure and so on and so forth. So again, they took a very precise distribution strategy and came through it. One more example that comes to mind maybe again is that of Paperboat. If you look at their marketing strategy, what they did. So initially you could find that they did not directly go into retail. So they started selling or offering their products through airlines. So when you are flying, you were offered Paperboat drinks and so on and so forth. So in that way, they started with a very small market. It was kind of a testing that whether the people were liking their products, they got the feedback of the consumers, then they kind of expanded into the larger market. So there are several ways you can do that, but again, as I said, it depends on what you are trying to offer. If you have a particular strategy, I think it has been discussed here, or maybe it will be discussed in marketing management too. So there is something called test marketing. So if you have developed a new product, you can always test that product in a small segment to get some feedback and get some idea, and then move on to increase your investment or increase your size of factory or whatever. So these are the ways in which, if you want to have a low investment with high profit, you can try. But then, firstly, the type of products in which this will work is very limited. Two, you need to have access to things like, for example, when we talked of Pulse or when we said about Paperboat, the idea was they had access to that kind of distribution. Pulse could actually be made available by the company at all the Kirana outlets or most of the Kirana small outlets, because the parent company had a very strong distribution network. So you have to look at what are your strengths. If you can play to your strength and can come up with a product with minimal investment and then create a strategy such that which does not involve much of a marketing campaign or so on and so forth, so in that way you can have low investment with high profit. So these are some of the questions that has been asked, and as of now we are not having any more questions. So okay, one thing I would like to clarify. So several people have asked regarding change of location for their exams, but we are sorry to inform that the locations for the exams are already freezed and it is no longer possible to change the location for the exam. For any other such queries, you can always use the forum wherein we will be more than happy to reply to your doubts and queries. So these are all the questions that had been asked, and okay, so we have a question saying, do test marketing happen in-house or it is usually outsourced? Say if you are a large company and you are trying to come up with a new product, you will try to make it as hush hush as possible. You do not want people to know that you are coming out with something like this, or more than people, you do not want the competitors to know that you are coming out with something or some kind of an offering. So typically for large companies it is in house. However, sometimes they may opt for outsourcing depending on manpower issues and location access issues. For example, if you are trying to do a text marketing in Nagpur and you do not have shops or sellers out there, so you want to do a survey or some kind of stuff, you might opt for an outsourced option. So, but usually they are not. Usually they are not. So I think I don't exactly remember whether test marketing is discussed in MM1, but if you again, if it's not, it is there in MM2, you can go through the lectures of MM2, you will have some idea regarding this test marketing. So I think it has been discussed under product section of MM2. You can, for further details, you can always refer to those particular lectures. So these are the questions that we had, and I guess since we are not having any more questions, um, so
No other questions.
no other questions.
Okay, then
So
shall we give them 1 minute time in case if they post few
yeah,
more questions?
so if you have any more questions, please post in the hangout session, or where I can where we can see. And if you want to ask the professor also any questions, you can post it in the forum, or even here we will get back to you after getting the feedback or the answer from him. So please post. We will be waiting for some time if you have any questions. If not, then probably we will log out. Thank you.
Let's wait for a minute.
Yeah, sure.
If you want coffee, so
No.
okay, then water. How many students are watching? 13 are watching, but they are not posting
Only
their
one
question.
person asked.
Okay, how do you differentiate?
Okay. This will take some time. Okay. So a question has come by Mr. Hussain Kanchwala again, that how do you differentiate advertising and marketing? Let us go back to the first week contents that I think you must all have seen by now. So marketing is much more than advertising. Advertising is a very small subset of marketing. So what basically marketing is, uh, say for example, the first part or the first step of marketing is to understand what the consumers need. As you have seen during evolutions of various concepts of marketing, so now we can see that instead of creating a product and then forcing it to the consumer, it's better to first understand what they need. That forms the first or the primary step of any marketing activity or any marketing department, that is to understand what the consumers need. Then you try to see that whether you have that particular offering, or if you can come up with a particular new product or innovative offering that will satisfy that need. Once you have come up with that particular need, then you try to inform your consumers that okay, I have come up with a need, with an offering that is suitable enough to satisfy your need. Then you make those particular things available to the consumer using distributional channels such as e-commerce websites or retail stores. So marketing is about finding that value that is essential and is required by the consumers. When you offer a product, you basically offer some value. By value, I essentially mean that a consumer will pay for it using his time, his decision making skill, his money, etc., and he will extract some utility out of it. And that if that particular set of utilities exceeds the cost that he has incurred, then we say that the product's value is high. So once you have found out the source of that value, you have created that particular value in your service or product offering, you have communicated to the consumer that we have this particular offering which helps or which delivers this particular value, and you make them available to the consumer, then we say the whole steps of marketing are complete. Of course, then there is feedback and post purchase service and so on and so forth. Advertising mostly comes in during this information stage. That is, once you have created the value, you have to inform the consumers about that value, that okay, I have created something which will be able to solve your problem, because obviously consumers will not know about it by themselves. the role of advertising is thus in one way limited to only informing the consumers. Of course, it also helps you to get some feedback nowadays. For example, if you post an advertising in a YouTube, you will see that a lot of consumers will comment regarding, although most of them comment regarding how good or bad the advertising was, some will also comment regarding how good or bad the product was. So these things do help, right? But the whole dimension of marketing is much larger. The concept of marketing is concerned not only with informing consumers, but first identifying what they need, creating what they need, informing what they need, and then helping and supporting the consumers in getting what they need. That is the difference of marketing and advertising. Advertising is just a small subset of marketing. So how one question has come regarding how can we sell a pen in the market, need creative ideas. So well, to sell a pen, there can be several strategies. For example, you may come up with very good designs, or again, so okay, so for example, there in the market you can see several types of pens. So from there is Parker, and there is say Agni gels, and so on and so forth. So for example, you want to sell Agni gel in a market, so what you specifically need is basically a lot of distributors having those pens, because they are essentially very cheap. And specifically, if you can come up with contracts with organizations, that is companies that regularly use pens, say banks or offices, it will be very easy to sell those pens, because they are not looking for a pen with very high functional value. It's like only if it is able to write, they will be satisfied with it. But say, so there the idea is you come up with a large distribution chain. You make sure that the pen is available everywhere. You make sure that the pen is available, and there are contracts available with firms through which you can sell and sold your product. So you come up with, to attract consumers for that and differentiate your products for other competitors, say you come up with innovative colors, you come up with maybe a lower price point or something like that. But for example, when you are trying to sell something like a Parker or a Waterman, this particular strategy will be very different. To create a Waterman, or to sell a Waterman on a Parker, you need to show that it's a symbol of luxury, it's a symbol of status, and so on and so forth. So then what you can do is, you can, one way is to make sure that these pens are available in very high end shops, or uh, say for example, you make your Parker pens available in Mercedes showrooms or Audi showrooms, where people will go and they will see those pens, because it's a kind of a status or a symbol that you are trying to create. So you are trying to associate a kind of a luxury with these items. So again, it will have, depending on the type of market that you are trying to enter, and depending on the type of offering that you have to come up with ideas to sell pens, I guess. So some person has said unable to see. So I think that is resolved now. I think there was some time it was
Right.
resolved.
Okay. Yeah. Now we are live on.
Now we are like,
Yeah.
so I guess that answers your question. So innovative ideas will depend on, again, as I said, the type of segment. For low cost segments, you can come up with ideas such as I said, getting a contract from firms, extensive distribution channeling, and so on and so forth. While for high-end pens, you have to market them in subtle ways, so that people are viewing them, people are knowing about them, and at the same time, they are associating it with a premium or a luxury segment. So, okay, so another question has come saying that how can we artificially create a demand in the market? So, by artificially creating demand, I am assuming you are not referring to ways in which some people just lower the supply to inflate demand. That is, I am assuming you are not asking that. So, I am assuming what you are asking is, how do I create a demand for a particular product in the market, right? So, because that is, anyways, there are several anti-competitive practices which are not or should not be encouraged. So, as I was trying to say during that marketing versus advertising thing, the first thing in trying to create a demand is that consumers should know about your product. So, for example, I have considered that I have come up with a atta brand, a new atta brand. So, how will a consumer typically buy an atta? So he will go to the retailer shop, he will say, I want atta, and very likely he'll ask for a specific brand. So assuming he doesn't buy it from the flour mill or stuff, he will ask for a specific brand and he will come back. So these type of products, if you are to create a kind of a demand, then you have to go for kind of what is known as push strategy. That is, using the retailer, you have to push your product. Creating a pull from the consumer is difficult, but that's let me put it this way. So that is done by creating a strong brand. I mean, one of the ways it can be done is by creating a strong brand. For example, look at Ashirvad Atta. After consumers became aware of it through advertising and through a retailer push, people are now asking for that particular brands when they are visiting a particular shop. That brand has been able to create one, a strong differentiation that it is offering quality product because of its packaging and getting the best quality grains and so on and so forth. And two, that demand has also come from a set or segment of people who were looking for packaged datas that basically provides them with some benefits that loose atta do not provide. For example, in loose atta, there is a question regarding the hygiene and so on and so forth, the quality of atta and so on and so forth. Once Ashirvad realized that there is a particular segment of people who are looking for this particular benefit, who can be targeted, they first created a push, that is through extensive advertising and stuff, which finally resulted in a pull. Again, if you look at there are various ways in this can be done, and I really say that this will be discussed in way more detail in marketing management too. But say, for example, one of them is like, for example, the way in which Intel created a kind of a demand for its products. So this whole Intel Insight campaign was a huge marketing success, and it's a case study in top B schools and everywhere. You can look into Google, and it's called Ingredient Marketing, which we'll be discussing later. So the whole idea there is, when what happened as a result of their campaign was, when people went to buy computers, they looked specifically for computers with Intel processors. So there is no, again, as I was trying to say from the first question, there is no one way in which you can create a demand. You have to inform the consumers that you have something. Second, you have to deliver on the product. That is, once the consumers have purchased, they should not feel that, okay, this is really a bad product and I should not have it. Uh, and then you try to come up, you have to deliver a quality product, and then you have to maintain that quality and provide after sales and so on and so forth. So you are able to create a strong brand and hence push up the demand. So it's 4:50.
Yeah.
So okay, so I believe we are out of time, and I hope I have been able to clear some of your doubts. But please understand that if you have any further questions, feel free to post in the forum. I'll be more than happy to consult and send the questions to my professors, who will be able to answer you with further clarity and clear your doubts. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you.
Thanks, Ahmed.